In this lesson, let's talk about health and sanitation. Let me say right up front, I don't know much about chicken disease. We've been raising chickens for, half a century, and every single disease we've ever had, we created. It was our fault. We overcrowded, we didn't clean things up, we let them get too cold, wet, whatever. I admit to being weak on disease. What I'd rather do is stress the kind of habitat, thinking like a chicken, how do we make these chickens happy and comfortable enough that their immune system actually works well? That's the goal. First of all, vaccination is unnecessary. And yes, this ad is being paid by Pfizer Corporation to tell you not to, no, just a joke. Vaccinations are unnecessary. Medications are unnecessary. Again, there are plenty of chicken, whatever, disease books out there. My go-to is the Merck Veterinary Manual. I think everybody that has animals should have the Merck Veterinary Manual, not to get the drugs that they push in there from Merck Pharmaceuticals, but to get the diagnosis. It's a 2,000-page book with every species and every disease you can imagine in there. And so, I encourage everybody to have a Merck Veterinary Manual. I have one on the shelf, and whenever we have an issue, I can look at that. So, all the typical stuff, the biosecurity, foot baths, shower in, shower out. All that, we don't do any of that stuff here. We never have, and I don't intend to. We just think that wellness comes from a vibrant, robust immune system that comes from a good habitat. So, what are the key components, let's say, of a disease prevention program? First of all, we want to vacate premises periodically. So as I mentioned in the first lesson, we're standing here where the chickens were in the winter in this hoop house. So now it's all vacated. There won't be a chicken in here until next winter. Some of these we actually grow vegetables in during the summer. So the point is, vacate those premises periodically so that you have host-free periods, a couple times a year. That's one of the advantages in having summer housing and winter housing, having seasonal housing. That forces us to vacate the winter housing in the summer and vacate the summer housing in the winter. So that's an imposed vacation just because we have two different kinds of structures. The next thing is clean out the nest. That includes cleaning out the nest. So when the chickens aren't using the nest, you've got that downtime, clean out the nest boxes, power spray them down, spray dormant oil on them for any mites and things that get in around those nest boxes. That bedding in the nest boxes a lot of times where little things like mites and stuff get a foothold. Clean that out in between times. Let it air out. Let it be really nesting material free so there's no place for them to go and have babies and proliferate. Next is dust baths for mites. So here's the recipe for a good dust bath. So chickens love to dust bathe, as you know. They get in and fluff around. And so the recipe is 1 part soil, 1 part sand, and 1 part wood ashes. So that's a good reason to heat your house with a wood stove, is to have enough wood ashes. And that 1 part, 1 part, 1 part, you can put it in a box, a shallow pan of some sort, and the chickens will gravitate to it and they will get in there and dust bathe, and that wood ash gets in their body and it kills. It's a way to kill mites. So it's a really hygienic way to keep them healthy. A lot of times you don't realize that birds have mites. That's probably the most common issue with outdoor poultry or non-chemicalized poultry is mites. Probably because you can't see them very well. They get bedded down in the feathers, but they do suck a lot of blood and they will absolutely debilitate the chicken over time. Next is to keep the water clean. Chickens are, they're scratching. So that means you want the water to be protected from the chickens so they can't get in it, they can't perch on the edge of it. Like out in the eggmobile where they do have access to it, we dump it every day. We clean it out, slush it out with our hands and clean it up. In these hoop houses with the hanging waterers, you want to hang them, so the bird it's way up off the floor, so they can't inadvertently come along, scratch the bedding and scratch manure up into that water pan. If you have an open pan, we'll put a roof on it so the chickens can't sit on the edges and jump in it. So keep clean water is really a big deal, and this is why the industry has gone to the nipple waterers in commercial houses, is because there's no water exposure to the outside except that little itty bitty drip right on the end of that drip waterer. Another real important aspect here is in the winter, throw in some roadkill. Throw in some old meat. The old timers around here, when I was a kid, they're all passed away now, but they always told me one of the first jobs for farm boys was once a week to go out and shoot, trap, otherwise get some a raccoon, a possum, a skunk, rats, some sort of carcass, and put it in for the chickens when there weren't insects. So in the winter, you don't have the insects and bugs and things like that. We bring home roadkill during hunting season. It's cold, so you can keep some deer carcasses from hunting or whatever for a good while before spoilage. We just throw it in here, and the chickens pick off every little morsel of meat, and it gives them some animal protein to eat when the insects and bugs are dormant in that winter time. And then the final thing is the no access to cold, muddy, wet conditions. And that's why in the winter, it's actually more healthy and sanitary for the chickens to exclude them from outdoor access in a completely secure indoor setting with deep bedding. That is actually more sanitary and healthful than allowing them daily access out into a dirt yard that's going to be wet, cold, and muddy. That's going to grow pathogens. They're going to bring all that in on their feet. Their feathers are going to get wet. Now when they get cold, they're going to be colder because the feathers are wet. They're caked with mud. They lose their insulative capacity. As soon as that chicken feathers get either wet or caked with mud, they've lost their insulative capacity, and now they're going to be cold. Those are the critical elements. And so what we want to do is make sure that we vacate premises routinely, that we clean out the premises between times, and especially clean out the nest boxes between times, and give them that nice dust bath with the soil, the sand, and the wood ashes, and make sure the water's clean, and make sure that they get some meat in the wintertime, and that they don't have access to muddy themselves up and lose their insulative capacity on their feathers with cold, muddy, wet conditions.